Beneath the golden ceremonial robes of King Valerius, there was no flesh, no pulse, and absolutely no warmth. The royal physician, Jeremy, stared in absolute horror as his surgical blade scraped against a ribcage made entirely of polished brass and ticking gears. A world-breaking discovery now lay exposed before him, raising a terrifying question that demanded an immediate answer. Who, or what, had been ruling the mountain kingdom of High Crest for the last 2 decades? Jeremy backed away from the unconscious monarch, his hands trembling so violently that the silver scalpel slipped from his fingers and clattered onto the marble floor. He remembered the history books well, specifically how King Valerius had miraculously survived the Great Fever exactly 20 years ago. The citizens praised the heavens for the recovery of their beloved ruler, noting how he never seemed to age a single day after that fateful winter. Now, the chilling truth was painfully clear: the Real King had never survived that sickness at all. The young physician hastily covered the chest of the mechanical sovereign, pulling the velvet drapes shut around the royal bed. He recalled the peculiar habits of the king that everyone had accepted without question for 20 long years. The ruler never ate meals in the presence of his court, and a heavy, metallic perfume always clung to his grand robes. It was not a fragrance of luxury, but a clever disguise to mask the scent of industrial oil and grinding cogs. Seeking answers before panic could consume him, Jeremy hurried through the candlelit corridors to the deepest recesses of the royal archives. He searched for the records of the previous high physician, a man named Master Corwin, who had mysteriously vanished the very night the king recovered from the fever. Deep within a locked iron cabinet, Jeremy discovered a dusty, handwritten journal hidden behind stacks of tax ledgers. The final entry contained a frantic warning about a secret pact made with the deep engineers of the mountain. Suddenly, the massive bronze bells of the citadel began to toll, shattering the silence of the midnight hour. The sound echoed through the stone halls, signaling an emergency assembly of the inner council. A breathless royal guard pounded on the archive door, shouting that King Valerius had awakened and demanded the immediate presence of his physician. Jeremy felt his blood run cold as he realized he had no choice but to face the artificial monarch once more. Jeremy entered the grand throne room, where the air felt uncomfortably heavy and thick with the scent of burning incense. King Valerius sat perfectly upright upon the obsidian throne, his crown gleaming under the torchlight. When the king spoke, his voice possessed a strange, melodic resonance that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. The sovereign looked directly at Jeremy and asked if the midnight examination had yielded the desired results. Jeremy forced a calm expression onto his face, bowing low to conceal the sheer terror in his eyes. He lied smoothly, claiming that the sovereign was merely suffering from exhaustion and required rest. The king smiled, but the movement of his lips was precise, symmetrical, and completely devoid of human warmth. Satisfied with the answer, the king dismissed the court, leaving Jeremy with a burning determination to find where the true flesh-and-blood ruler was buried. Later that night, Jeremy used a stolen iron key to slip into the forbidden royal catacombs beneath the mountain citadel. The air grew progressively colder as he descended the spiral staircase, lit only by a flickering lantern. He passed the tombs of ancient queens and fallen princes until he reached the very back of the crypt. There, hidden behind a heavy tapestry, stood a grand sarcophagus made of solid amber. Jeremy wiped the dust from the amber surface and gasped aloud. Inside the translucent stone lay the perfectly preserved body of the true King Valerius, looking exactly as he did 20 years ago. The inscription on the base confirmed his death during the winter of the Great Fever. Before Jeremy could process the sight, a heavy shadow fell over him, and the sharp ring of a drawing sword echoed through the crypt. Jeremy turned around to see Captain Ronald of the Royal Guard standing in the darkness, his blade pointed directly at the physician's throat. Jeremy raised his hands, expecting to be executed for discovering the grand treason. Instead, Captain Ronald lowered his weapon with a heavy sigh, revealing that he had known the truth from the very beginning. The captain explained that the mechanical king was not a monster, but a necessary savior. Captain Ronald led the bewildered physician deeper into the subterranean caverns, far beneath the resting place of the dead kings. They emerged onto a stone precipice overlooking a breathtaking, colossal cavern. At the center of the void hung a massive, glowing mechanical heart, connected to the foundations of the entire city by miles of copper pipes and iron chains. The machine hummed with a deep, rhythmic power that kept the mountain stable. The sound of heavy footsteps made both men turn as King Valerius himself walked out onto the stone ledge. The sovereign did not attack. Instead, he unlatched the brass plates of his own face, revealing a hollow chamber of glowing blue energy. A collective melody of voices emerged from the machine, explaining that the entity was the living consciousness of High Crest itself, sustained by the ancient engine. Then came the devastating realization that shattered everything Jeremy believed to be true. The collective voice revealed that the mechanical heart was failing because it required a biological anchor, a living vessel, to renew its core every 20 years. The machine explained that Jeremy was not a random commoner who became a physician by chance. He was a genetic construct, created in a secret laboratory 20 years ago using the DNA of the dying king. The truth hit Jeremy like a physical blow as his entire life recontextualized before his eyes. His memories of an orphan childhood, his sudden scholarship, and the convenient placement of the old physician journal were all part of a grand design. He had been carefully bred, monitored, and guided to this very room to fulfill a preordained destiny. He was never meant to expose the secret, he was meant to become it. King Valerius stepped back, pointing toward an open iron chamber connected directly to the glowing mechanical heart. The collective voice offered Jeremy an impossible choice with no happy outcome. He could refuse, flee the city, and watch the mountain collapse, destroying the thousands of innocent citizens living above. Or, he could step into the machine, surrender his humanity, and become the next Clockwork king. Jeremy looked out through a fissure in the mountain, watching the distant lights of the peaceful city below. He knew what he had to do to save his people. He walked forward with firm steps, entering the metallic chamber as the copper wires began to attach to his skin. The brass faceplates of the old sovereign fell away, ready to be forged onto his own countenance as the cycle began anew.